Today, we're going to peel back something like 9,000 years of history to look at one of humanity's very first and maybe most mysterious urban experiments, a place called Çatalhöyük. And let me tell you, this ancient community basically challenges everything we thought we knew about the dawn of civilization.
Okay, so picture a city, right? Thousands of people. But get this. It has absolutely no streets, no alleyways, not even a single door on the ground floor. Now, that might sound like science fiction, but I promise you it's not. This was the reality of Çatalhöyük, a place that just turns our whole idea of a city on its head. So, life here was just radically different. People lived in these squarish mud brick houses, all packed in super tight, kind of like a beehive. If you wanted to get home, you'd have to climb a ladder up onto your roof and then climb down another ladder into your house. The rooftops, they were the streets, the town square, the social hub, all rolled into one. And this is the wild part, families buried their dead right there under the floors of the very homes they lived in.
So, you can imagine, this has been the million-dollar question for archaeologists for decades. I mean, in a place this crowded, this strange, how did they all get along? What was the social glue that held this whole thing together for more than 1,000 years?
Well, it turns out the answer was right there all along. They literally left it for us, buried with their ancestors. The key to unlocking this whole social mystery wasn't in their pottery or their tools. The secret, it was in their bones.
To crack this case, scientists brought out the big guns, ancient DNA analysis. By pulling genetic material from the human remains found under those houses, they could finally start to piece together a family tree, or really a whole social map for this ancient city. And we're not talking about just a handful of samples here. No, this was a massive undertaking. A huge study analyzed the DNA of 131 different individuals from 35 different houses. This huge amount of data gave them the first real concrete evidence of how this whole society was actually put together. Okay, so to really get what they found, we gotta look at the timeline. Çatalhöyük wasn't just a flash in the pan. I mean, this place was around for over 1,000 years. And, over that much time, things change. And in this case, something really fundamental about their society changed in a big way.
And this is where it gets super interesting. In the beginning, a house pretty much meant family, people related by blood. But fast forward a few hundred years, totally different story. You start finding houses filled with people who weren't related at all. And how do we know they lived together as a household? Well, chemical clues in their bones show they were all eating the exact same diet. They were sharing meals, living life together, but they weren't blood relatives.
And look at this. It shows that change so clearly. Back in the early days, almost 2/3, 63% of the people buried together in a house were close family. But by the late period, that number just craters, all the way down to 22%. Their whole idea of what a household was, it was evolving away from being just about blood ties. But here's the twist. Even as the importance of being blood relatives started to fade, one thing stayed consistent. One pattern held strong through the entire 1,000-year history of the city, and that was a focus on the female line. Yeah, this quote from the actual research paper really nails it. What it's saying is that whenever they did find a genetic link between people living in the same house, it was almost always through the mom's side of the family, through mothers and daughters and sisters. That maternal connection, that was the constant. And this chart just lays it all out, doesn't it? Genetic links through the mother's line? Super common. But connections through the father's line? You barely see it. It's practically zero. So what does that tell us? It points to a society where women and their lineage were really the anchor of the household. And get this, it's not just the DNA telling this story. The archaeology totally backs it up. They found that female children were buried with 5 times more grave goods, precious things like beads and ornaments, than the male children were. Now, that is not an accident. That's a huge signal that this society placed a really special value on its girls. Okay, so what's the big picture here? What does all this add up to? Well, it means that this one ancient city basically forces us to completely rethink some of our most basic assumptions about how human society even got started.
See, for the people of Çatalhöyük, family was this wonderfully flexible concept. It wasn't just about who your biological parents were. It seems like they practice fostering, adoption, what we might today call chosen family. And these social bonds were every bit as real and as important as blood ties, maybe even more so as time went on.
So how does this stack up against the old textbook story? Well, for a long, long time, the standard model for early farming societies was that they were all about the guys, male-centered, where women would leave their own families to go live with their husband's community. Chadal just throws a giant wrench in all of that. It gives us a completely different and much earlier alternative, a world built around women and a much more fluid idea of family.
And this is the key takeaway right here. The rise of agriculture and the building of cities did not automatically lead to societies dominated by men. That wasn't some unavoidable destiny for humanity. Chadal proves there were other paths. Other ways to build a complex society were not only possible, they were successful for over 1,000 years. And that really just leaves us with a final question. The story of Chadal isn't just some dusty old history lesson. It's a mirror. It forces us to look at our own assumptions about where we all come from. And what it shows us is that the past is so much more diverse, so much more complex, and honestly, a whole lot more interesting than we ever imagined.